I'm Jane Rudolph.
And I'm Monsignor Charles Minor.
I'm Father Joe Glass. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
You know, Lent has a new meaning anymore for many of us, rite of Christian initiation for adults.
That's right, the RCIA.
Are you working at it?
We are. It's mandatory now in the parishes, and I find it a great program. It's the process we used to call a conversion or making converts. Now it's more of a long, involved process. Brings the whole parish into it. It's enlivening.
What do you think of it, Jane?
Well, I think it's nice, especially since most of us think of that as confirmation, which came way back when, what, in 3rd or 4th grade. So now we see it as more of an adult decision to accept the church.
Yeah, real good for parish life.
Okay, well, tonight we also have some good programs for you. In fact, actually a sobering piece. We're going to take you on a trip back in time to Poland as we view the horrors of the Holocaust.
Another sobering idea, Father Frank Barszewski talks about how to deal with those who are terminally ill and comatose.
Mike Gallagher will be reviewing the film Wall Street, and I'll be talking with Tom O'Brien, who's a psychotherapist of the Archdiocese, and he'll be giving us some tips on dealing with the scapegoating effect of adolescence. In other words, how to deal with bullies.
The bully's attitude is usually, I'm better than you are, and there's nothing that can harm me. And sometimes that same sort of a mindset creeps into religion as well.
You know, Pope John XXIII called a council, and his idea was there's such a fractured image of Christ in the world, it's important that he get together and get the unified picture of our Lord. And when Christians practice their presence together, they will give us a truer picture of Christ.
Louisville, Kentucky is undeniably a model of cooperation between different religious traditions. Every Thursday morning, the religious leaders of Louisville have breakfast together.
We don't think of it in quite the same category.
Across town, this man coordinates a community ministry program sponsored by 26 neighborhood churches of 8 different denominations.
Yes, ma'am, that would have been our outreach program office. I can give you their number.
Once a month, Catholics and Southern Baptists get together to explore areas of conflict and common interest.
And they're getting introduced to theology for the first time. I remember my first systematic...
In many Louisville neighborhoods, Protestant and Catholic parishes sign agreements which bind them together in prayer and community outreach.
The covenant affirms healing and reconciliation as 2 factors of great importance to the 2 churches.
In yet another effort, married couples meet to discuss the problems, challenges, and joys of being one family, trying to balance 2 different religious traditions.
It's just adding disunity when they're supposed to be promoting unity.
All over Louisville, Kentucky, people of faith are striving to keep the spirit of ecumenism alive and well.
I find the climate profoundly enriching to me as a Catholic and to me as a bishop.
Thomas Kelly is the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Louisville.
From this experience, I'm finding that the defense of our Roman Catholic confessionalism is not this doesn't have the same emphasis that it used to have in my life or elsewhere. What is terribly important is for us to be Christian.
One way that Archbishop Kelly keeps the lines of ecumenical communication open is his attendance at a weekly breakfast with leaders of 6 major denominations.
Now, there's no agenda for this. We have other places where we go to do agendas, but we like each other and we're a strong support group for each other. And I think originally we might have been thought of as a group that would cry together about the problems that we have in our service to our separate churches. But eventually we got beyond that, and we prayed together, but we like each other's company.
In 1964, the Second Vatican Council issued the Decree on Ecumenism, which called for Catholics to recognize the signs of the times and to participate fully in the work of ecumenism. The people of Louisville were more than ready to meet the Vatican's challenge. While the initial fervor of reform has worn off in many areas of the country, Louisville's churches continue to explore innovative ways to work together. One area of exploration is what Vatican II called scholarly ecumenism, formal dialogue set up between major denominations. This group represents the Roman Catholic Southern Baptist dialogue. Father George Kilcourse organized the group several years ago.
Here in the Louisville area, 1 out of every 3 practicing Christians is a Roman Catholic, and approximately 1 out of every 3 practicing Christians is a Southern Baptist. And just by sheer numbers, it was about time that we got serious about dialogue.
It was interesting, a year ago we decided that in this dialogue that we were going to tackle the question of grace, which is
Jim Holliday is pastor of the East Baptist Church in Louisville.
Dialogue had worked on and published some papers on, and thought we'd just run into all kinds of monumental, problems and get really some meaty type of stuff. And really, we found out that some of us who were Baptists didn't understand what we meant by grace and how it's received and mediated, and some of the guys that were Catholics didn't understand all of the loaded language of theology, and we found that we agreed more on that issue than we disagreed.
Research into Catholic marriages in Louisville prompted Father Kilcourse to form another group, not of theologians, but of couples who are trying to meet the challenges of an ecumenical marriage.
She'd been going to the church with the kids there at the Episcopal Church for weeks, and finally she was asked by the pastor there if she wanted to join the Widows Club. And she was just so taken back. She said, "I'm not a widow." She said, I've got a husband. He's at home. He says he's not dead. He's just a Roman Catholic. When we did the research, we were aware that this was a phenomenon that was happening more and more frequently, but we didn't realize that it was half of our marriages were taking place nowadays as ecumenical marriages. That got us in mind of some of the pastoral needs that we were going to have to anticipate. For example, when you have a couple in an ecumenical marriage, they're suddenly faced with questions about their family.
Evidence of ecumenism is seen throughout the community. Many neighborhood congregations have signed documents called covenant agreements. After years of interaction and discussion, 2 or more congregations sign an official document stating their common beliefs, promising to pray for each other and to work together in social ministries. Epiphany Catholic Church is one of many Catholic parishes that has entered into covenant relationships with neighboring churches. In addition to having a covenant with St. Luke's Episcopal Church, Epiphany recently signed a covenant with Anchorage Presbyterian, the first covenant ever signed between Catholic and Presbyterian congregations. The churches co-sponsor several activities, including a summer Bible camp designed for children of all 3 traditions. Community ministries are also a large part of Louisville's commitment to ecumenism. In the Highland neighborhood, 26 churches representing 8 denominations have joined forces to offer extensive social service programs, from daycare centers to housing renovation and programs for the elderly. Their goals are to promote Christian unity and improve the quality of life in their neighborhood. Stan Esterly is the director of Highland Community Ministries.
The essence of ecumenical community ministries, from my point of view, is that we agree to work upon those basic principles and concepts that we can agree upon, and we respectfully disagree on the areas that we do not agree upon, and yet we stay together as a family.
And I think that this is the great discovery of the ecumenical movement. We've been so negligent of the gifts of each other in the various traditions, and we've, in that sense, impoverished ourselves. Ecumenism is all about the richness of being a Christian.
We're beginning to like each other. We're beginning to respect one another's traditions. We're beginning to see in each other the face, the figure, the life of Christ.
Unity requires a lot of give and take, and most of the time we don't want to give. And Christian unity is the same requirement, but it must not be only the bishops and heads adjudicatories. We all have to work at it.
Please give us your time tonight and don't go away. There's more to come.
Since 1981, Reel to Reel has been proclaiming the good news by bringing you stories of Christian faith in action. We do it by roaming the Delaware Valley, searching for people of faith, hope, and charity.
But like all modern media, it is an expensive proposition. If you're a new viewer, or if you've enjoyed Reel to Reel for many years, we'd like to thank you for watching and invite you to participate by actively supporting the show.
With costs rising all around us, we need your financial support. A donation of $5, $10, $20, or whatever you can send will help to keep us on the air.
Send your contributions to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia, PA 19103. And thank you.
20 years ago, leukemia took enough lives to fill a ballpark. But today, we're closing in on this killer, the Leukemia Society of America.
Meet Tom O'Brien, who's a psychotherapist in private practice. He's also the coordinator of the Counseling and Guidance Service with the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Tom, welcome to the set of Reel to Reel.
Thank you.
You are doing some work, I know, helping adolescents deal with the scapegoat syndrome of being bullied in their lives. How'd you get into that kind of work?
Well, I've had the unique advantage of seeing students or adolescents who have been scapegoated from two vantage points. One is within the private practice when their parents bring them in because of some problems that they may be having with their peers. And also from being in schools for a good 17 years, both elementary and secondary, and seeing that sometimes there are certain students within the population of any school who seem to be targeted by other kids.
And you saw it as kind of a widespread problem, huh?
Mm-hmm. I've seen it as a widespread problem, and I think it's in Catholic schools, I think it's in Christian schools, I know that it's in public schools as well, and you know, it's not unique to any group, you know, of schools.
You've been trying to deal with it one-on-one through your practice, and now you've taken that to a different level recently. Can you explain that?
Right. Well, recently, in talking with Dr. Fitzgibbons, with whom I worked, we decided that it might be important to try to help these students or these adolescents in a different way. And I talked to him about formulating a group, which we did, a psychotherapy group for adolescents who are particularly scapegoated by their peers.
And this is a peer support group?
And this is a peer support group, and it's targeted to run approximately 8 weeks and then begin again, but we may see it more as an ongoing group because of a need.
Okay, you're meeting in the Bala-Cynwyd area, is it?
And we're meeting at the office
weekly,
in Bala-Cynwyd on Saturdays,
Saturday
in the
mornings,
morning.
Weekly basis. Okay, and what kind of things do you try to deal with in the group? How's it approach the problem?
Okay, well, there are 3 areas that I think are very important to any child who's been scapegoated by their peers. One is that you have to rebuild their sense of self-esteem. They lose the sense of who they are because who they are becomes what everyone tells them they are. And particularly among those people who are their own age, they're getting a lot of negative feedback that says you're not okay, you're too fat, or you're too thin, or you're too tall, or you're too short.
And eventually they begin to believe that.
And eventually they begin to believe that. And they have to begin to rebuild their own sense of self. They lose a sense again of their own body image. For example, they have negative feelings about their own body, you know, that it's just not right, something's not right with them. So I try to work with that first to rebuild them.
And what comes second? Self-esteem?
Secondly, I would say that we begin to work on anger, both aspects of anger. One, the misdirected anger that they're receiving from their peers, which is being dumped on them, and then their own internal anger about what's happening to them.
Right. The anger back. Yeah. Okay.
Primarily, though, they would be seen as adolescents who are not angry. The kids who are scapegoated. Most people would say, well, they're calm and they're quiet, they're helpful, they tend to do things. But they tend to retreat to their home, particularly if their home's a safe place. Because that seems to be about the only place that they might be accepted.
Is harbored inside and festers there. What's the third level you try to build up?
The third level that I try to build with them is a sense of trust. They begin to lose trust in adults. They lose trust because they feel unprotected many times by adults.
All right.
And trust in their peers.
We just have a little bit of time left. How about some advice to parents who may be watching tonight who suspect that their children or grandchildren are being scapegoated, huh?
Well, I think some of the things that they should look for first is, does the child retreat from association with their peers? Do they stay in a lot? They don't tend to go out. When a parent says, well, don't you have any friends you can go to the movies with, or don't you have any friends you can go out with, the child who's scapegoated always tends to say, well, I have friends at school. But when you talk to, if a parent talks to teachers and things, they find out that they're pretty much loners, that they're isolated.
All right. We're right at the end. I want to give your number now for folks who'd be interested in contacting you and getting their sons or their grandchildren involved in this support group. The number to reach Tom O'Brien is 215-664-5415. I'll give it again. That's 215-664-5415. Tom, thanks for being here and sharing your work with us. Now back to you, Monsignor and Jane.
One of the most dreadful things I think are frightening for me is power and its use. It seems to me this is one of the areas we all have to work at so much.
There's power everywhere, even in Hollywood. When people flock to see a movie and they're influenced by it, that honestly is power. Well, Mike Gallagher always comes through with a review. And tonight we're going to look at Wall Street, the blockbuster hit, which not only gives us the hectic pace of the financial district, but pinpoints the lack of morality.
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. Wall Street the movie, as opposed to Wall Street the real thing, scored a brilliant success at the end of the year, and it's still going strong. Now, what I find fascinating about this movie is that its theme is that Hollywood no-no, morality. Yes, Wall Street is a moral play of sorts. Its hero Bud, played by Charlie Sheen, is a young stockbroker from a blue-collar family. A few years out of NYU, he's been making more money than his father, but the expenses entailed in living the role, the Manhattan apartment, the expensive suits and the like are considerable, and the poor guy even has to hit the old man up for a loan now and then. Bud dreams of being Gordon Gekko, played by Michael Douglas, a flamboyant wheeler-dealer, rich beyond the dreams of avarice, or at least beyond most people's dreams of avarice, not Gordon's. Now Gordon takes Bud under his wing, playing Mephistopheles to his Faust, and soon Bud is ensconced in an East Side penthouse and has a mistress as greedy for the good life as he is. Naturally, after a undue amount of wallowing and luxury that comes with success, our hero repents, and as being Hollywood, he has better luck than did poor Faust. Wall Street, as I said, is a moral play of sorts, with the emphasis on of sorts. It's all for little people. It's against greed. It comes out in favor of being true to yourself. This is fine and dandy as far as it goes, but the hero, long before he breaks the law, is a cynical exploiter of women. Did one kind of sin, to use the old-fashioned term, lead to another? Now, it seems reasonable enough, but there's not a hint of it in the screenplay. All the women in the movie are given short shrift and are treated dismissively. The movie's view of morality, in other words, is highly selective. It's wrong to steal, but when it comes to sex, boys will be boys and girls just don't count. The trouble with Wall Street is not so much that it preaches. A good sermon would do all of us some good, but that it preaches badly. I'm Mike Gallagher for Arts Review.
Once again, even with a box office hit, Mike has a chance to delve below the surface and finds out the real meaning.
We'd like you to stay around for a lot of real meetings which are coming up for serious thought.
Since December of 1985, an exhibition from the Auschwitz State Museum called Auschwitz: Crimes Against Mankind has been on tour in the United States.
Many people find retirement isn't as much fun as they thought it would be. Too much time on their hands, too little to do. The Retired Senior Volunteer Program has thousands of opportunities for retired executives, housewives, engineers, teachers, whatever your skills or schedule. RSVP has something to fit anyone's interests. You've learned a lot in your life. Share the experience of a lifetime.
We welcome your comments and suggestions and encourage you to write to us at Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, Room 907, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19103, or call us during regular business hours at 215-668-9842.
Where do we draw the line when dealing with comatose patients and the questions of whether or not to keep up the life support systems? How do you make that decision?
Decisions are very difficult to make. And sometimes we think they're other people's. They're our decisions, and many times our own dear ones are very much involved, and you and I are involved. It's nice that Father Frank Barszewski comes to us tonight to give us some ground rules and some guidelines on how to meet these decisions by the use of ordinary and extraordinary means for coming to face these decisions.
In recent weeks, the media have focused on the particular problem that deals with an irreversibly comatose or brain-dead patient who is being treated with the administration of artificial food and fluids. Before we go any further, it's a good idea to simply state that this is not here a question of active euthanasia, that is, mercy killing. we are dealing with a brain-dead patient or an irreversibly comatose patient. This is a highly emotionally charged issue. Words like food, starvation, dying of thirst conjure up in our minds the idea of a person sitting at a table and sharing a meal with us. Artificial food and fluids are administered to a patient through a plastic tube, and so we're not dealing with the ordinary social convention of a meal. There are two sides to this particular question. One group of people state that providing food and fluids to an individual who is brain dead or comatose is simply ordinary treatment, something that traditionally has been provided for a patient. On the other hand, another group of theologians hold that this could be construed to be extraordinary means of keeping a person alive. Most people are currently comfortable with the notion of saying that a patient may be taken off a respirator, for example, when it is realized that all we are doing is prolonging the process of dying rather than providing any real benefit to the patient. A group of people say that the same process is being maintained by artificially providing food and fluids. It is not an easy question to answer. Currently, we need to wait for further direction from either the Vatican or the National Council of Bishops, which would give us further information and ethical guidance in our decision-making. Such information is necessary for us as medical technology goes further and further in caring for people and making us make the ethical decisions that say it is enough, it is time to put ourselves in the hands of God.
As we face into the idea of Easter and Good Friday, it's difficult for us to face also the idea of torture, suffering, and death when it comes to Jesus.
When we think about that in this century, we must think about the Holocaust, the senseless rape of humanity. Take a trip back in time with us as we realize that it is something that affects everyone, even to today.
As these American pilgrims retrace the steps of the 4 million European men, women, and children who were killed here during the war, it had long been clear to the entire world that the only freedom from Auschwitz came in death. This film, taken by the Soviet Army, which helped to liberate the death camp, shows conditions at the camp on its liberation day. Shown to all visitors who enter the Auschwitz State Museum, these scenes are graphic reminders of the Hitler-inspired attempt at systematic extermination of European Jews and other non-Aryans. Only a few thousand people, including young children on whom Nazi doctors often performed medical experiments, were found at Auschwitz when it was liberated. The camp had held more than 200,000 prisoners. The serenity and strange quietness of this day belied the years of torture, hardship, and death that characterized Auschwitz from 1940 to 45. In this courtyard, where the Nazis boarded up windows to hide their actions, some 20,000 people alone were lined up and shot to death at what is known as the Wall of Death. Facing this same courtyard is located the small barred window of the starvation cell where Franciscan Father Maximilian Kolbe, a Catholic priest, was held and eventually murdered. The tiny dark cell is lit by a candle and adorned with fresh flowers to honor Kolbe, who was proclaimed a saint of the Catholic Church in 1982. Kolbe had offered to take the place of an Auschwitz prisoner, a family man, who was to be executed for attempted escape from the death camp. Not far from this spot is found the most sinister remains of the Nazi plan to wipe out European Jews, a building where incoming prisoners were told they were to be deloused in showers. Little could they have known that they were entering a gas chamber. It was in this large, concrete-walled room that poisonous Zyklon B gas pellets were released, asphyxiating the very old and the very young, who were deemed of no use to the Nazis for work in the camps or wartime German factories. It's estimated that 80% of those arriving at Auschwitz were immediately sent to their deaths here. Before the camp was liberated, the Nazis destroyed all but this one crematorium where prisoners' bodies were reduced to ashes. In this building, the crematorium was in a room adjoining the gas chamber. 2 bricked ovens, one with metal body carts, are all that remain at Auschwitz. Since December of 1985, an exhibition from the Auschwitz State Museum called Auschwitz: Crimes Against Mankind has been on tour in the United States. Sponsored by the United Jewish Appeal, this exhibit's American tour is the result of the first-of-its-kind agreement between that American Jewish organization and the Polish government. This Holocaust museum brings to those who view it a vivid, personalized presentation of the history and horror of Auschwitz. It does so through a 135-panel presentation of artifacts, including personal pictures and other belongings of Auschwitz victims. They include these suitcases, many bearing the names of the men and women who carried them into the concentration camp. Eyeglasses, combs, toothbrushes, Jewish prayer shawls, rosaries, even the locks of hair shorn from the heads of women prisoners and used as filling for pillows and upholstery have been preserved. Visitors to the exhibit can also see part of the crematorium, as well as human ashes removed from the Auschwitz ovens. There is a prisoner's uniform and clogs, and the food bowl, also used for bathing and latrines. For Jews who were rounded up by the Nazis, purportedly to be resettled, Auschwitz was in reality a labor camp for many, a death camp for most. Located in a remote part of Poland, on the site of an old artillery barracks, the camp was nonetheless easily accessible by railroad from many regions of Europe. Jews from Holland, France, Belgium, Greece, and Hungary were interned here. For those prisoners not sent to the gas chambers, life at Auschwitz was often a slow death from starvation, disease, epidemics, torture, punishment, and medical experimentation at the hands of the angel of death, Dr. Joseph Mengele. Through this exhibit, people throughout the United States and Europe have the opportunity for study and reflection on one of the most tragic events of this century, a Holocaust that not only is part of Poland's past, but its future as well.
It has been a very serious and very sobering evening for all of us, especially that last piece, but we have to think about this.
And we are out of time, so until next week, please take care.
Good night, and God bless you.
Good night. See you next week.
Travel arrangements for Reel to Reel by Atkinson and Mullen Travel of Media, PA. Phone area 215-565-7070.
We will be having an Archdiocesan Teaching Day at Archbishop Ryan High School on March 12th.
The 40 teachers will speak on personal spiritual growth, on charisms, on scripture, and prayer groups.
Our day will begin with songs and praise and end with liturgy.
If you are new to the renewal and didn't yet pray in tongues, we have seminars just for you.
To register, call 215-668-HOPE for Saturday, March 12th.